first of all, Alan, joining us on the official EFL podcast. Congratulations on your retirement. How tough a call was it to call time on your football career?
It's always a tough call. I mean, I think everybody knows though. I knew when it was time as a player for me to finish, and I just felt it was right as well. It was, the end of the season was also my 65th birthday, and it just everything just seemed to fall into place. And I've been thinking about it for a while, but there's never really the right time to finish. It was a difficult decision, and yet it was quite an easy decision as well. But in the end, it was more the feelings that I had that it was probably time now to let some of the younger coaches, and there's probably going to be a change of management anyway. I mean, there seems to be these days quite a little bit. And any new manager coming in, I think it's only right that he brings in his own staff. And so, for a couple of reasons, I certainly don't regret it at the moment. I've enjoyed what is a little bit of retirement I've had so far. And but I guess when the season starts, that's probably when a little bit of the pangs will kick in.
Yeah, of course, we've recently had the fixtures being announced as well. I'm guessing you're not really going to miss those long trips up to Middlesbrough and South of London, etc.
No. I will certainly travel to a few of the games, but I mean it'll be selective games. Cardiff obviously will be a big one that I would like to go and see. Bristol is a good one. A couple of the Midland games, but. Certainly, coming back from, say, Hull on a Tuesday night is, coming back at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and then having to get back up and go back into training in the afternoon. Those are things I certainly wouldn't miss.
Yeah, I don't think people can really blame you for that. Just tell us, though, we'll get into sort of like your career chronologically, but just tell us, first of all, what Swansea Football Club means to you.
Oh, right. Well, I guess it's the club. I think it's probably not even my local club thinking about it. I'm in Cardiff. I'm actually not from Swansea. I was born in the Rhondda Valley, and it's pretty much a big sort of big Cardiff stronghold there. And I played a mixture of rugby and football in school. I captained the Rhondda team in rugby for up to about the age of 14, 15. Rugby in the morning and then football in the afternoon. My father used to drive me everywhere if I played with him. And it's only when it came to the stage that they both kicked off in the afternoon that I had to make a choice. But it's always going to be football. And I was spotted by a Swansea scout. It's almost as simple as that. I mean, no great allegiance to Swansea. I knew they always had a reputation for playing good football. But since I went down, I went down when I was 17 years of age. And almost sort of fell in love with the place straight away. It just felt a nice, easy fit for me. The people are very similar to the people back home. Where I lived. The different places that I lived over the years. And but the football club was so friendly, and they demanded of you as a player. I mean, there was always this Swansea way, as we call it, even nowadays. So it just felt like a good fit for me. And of course, you've experienced all the highs and lows of the years. You get promoted, but then there's the relegations as well. Going up to the top flight with the John Toshak, back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, that was a fantastic period. And obviously when you go to a coach, from us going almost from the bottom, almost falling out of League Two, then going to the Premier League, winning a cup, the League Cup. I think it was the Carling Cup in those days. No, it wasn't a Carling Cup.
Capital One Cup it was.
Capital One Cup, yeah. So and to experience those sort of those fantastic highs just really cemented the feelings that, and reinforced those feelings that you've had for the club. And to say I've always had good rapport with the crowd, and I think that always helps as well. I think that they see that they can see that you give 100%, and then the love that they sort of gave to you, then you sort of you give it back to the supporters as well. But it's not just it's not just the supporters. It's the club. It's the people who work for the club, and that's literally from the kitchen staff to the people in the laundry, to the people who man the turnstiles. I mean, it's a really big family club, and so the feelings for the place. It's like a second family, but I mean, it's probably probably spent more time of my career probably working at the club than I've spent at home. So it's it means a huge amount to me, and but I'll be eternally grateful for them for the number of years that I spent there.
Like you say, a boy from the Rhondda Valley. Who was your inspiration though, growing up and coming up as a footballer as a child?
Well, we were obviously a big family of football players anyway. My father was a decent football player, played good amateur football. But certainly the start of the family was my uncle, my mother's brother, Roy Paul, who captained Manchester City in 2 cup finals, 55 and 56. Lost in 55 to Newcastle, they lost 2-0. But then they beat Birmingham 3-1 in 56. Welsh international, started his career at Swansea, moved on to Man City, and then sort of played a couple of games, sort of Worcester City and places like that. But he was obviously a big inspiration to myself. And it's funny, when I first started, I was always known as Alan Curtis, the nephew of Roy Paul. And people used to say that you used to get annoyed with it. But I never did, because I felt it was a compliment, and it actually helped me when I first started at Swansea, because the senior players especially, they knew my Uncle Roy, and they knew what a great player he was, so they gave me a little bit of respect. And the coaches as well, some of the coaches actually played with him as well. So I think it was certainly much easier to sort of integrate with the into the first team. And though obviously he was such a great player, then my target was always to try to get as close to emulate him as much as I could.
You mentioned earlier that you played rugby as well as football. Was there ever a time in your life where you thought you might have gone down that route to play rugby, or was football always the one for you?
Well, the grammar school I went to, and it was a grammar school all over South Wales, I mean, they didn't play football at all. It was very much everybody played rugby in the schools. So it was obviously sort of it was something that you had to play. But I mean, I loved playing rugby. It was great. But there was football was always my first love. Even though possibly a couple of you should go on for Welsh trials, but not that I wasn't interested. It was just football was always going to be the driving force. Partly because of the family, but more so, I was probably better at football than I was at rugby.
I heard as well you had a trial with Manchester United as well growing up. Just tell us about that. What happened?
I was about, let me think, I would probably be about 12 or 13, and I actually went up as a friend of mine. Kelvin Davis was a year older, possibly even 2 years older. That he was going up for a trial, and I almost went up as company for him then. We were both from Pentre in the Rhondda, and Pentre was the mining village that Jimmy Murphy had come from. Jimmy Murphy was Matt Busby's number 2, the Busby Babes, and actually took over United after the Munich air disaster. And Jimmy was actually the manager of Wales when they got to the 58 World Cup, which was prior to Wales qualifying for Euro 2016, which was the only time Wales had ever qualified for a tournament. So Jimmy again was, I think he knew my father, and I think that we were both Pentre boys, so we went up. And it was a fantastic week. We had an absolutely brilliant week. It was literally a Monday to a Friday. We trained. We actually sort of changed a couple of times in the first team changing room, and to see all these, George Best, Dennis Law, Bobby Charlton, to actually be in the same changing room was a fantastic experience. We didn't sign. I mean, I think I was certainly glad to get back home. Even just being away for a week was probably enough for me. But it was a fantastic, great experience, and I couldn't speak too highly of United and Jimmy Murphy himself, for the way that they looked after us. But I try to think. I think Sammy McIlroy was up there at the same time. I think he was in that sort of the same period. I don't think there were too many other people who actually sort of went on, certainly that I can remember, went on to sort of play first team. But I do remember Sammy McIlroy come over from Ireland, and again, he looked an exceptional talent even at that age, and they obviously took Sammy on. But I think from the crowd that were with us, the group of players, I don't think too many moved on, and certainly didn't play first team anyway.
No, I suppose it says a lot about you and your performance at the time that a club like Manchester United are coming all the way down here and taking you to be looked at up in Manchester. It says a lot about your ability at that time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess it was just untapped. I mean, there was no coaching in those days. You would just obviously, your father would go out and you play football with you. But when you played, you was basically left to yourself. Like, I mean, I was sort of I don't know. I guess I was always a forward, but I played a lot of games in midfield. I mean, all you wanted to do was get hold of the ball and either run or pass with it. I mean, I probably was aware that I was a good player. That people would always sort of comment about your abilities and stuff like that. But I mean, to go to somewhere like United was it was something. Certainly, when I went to Swansea, when I went a couple of years later, about 4 or 5 years later, I mean, that certainly helped me because it was a period of trial matches before they actually decided that he looks like some sort of player then. And then they offered me to... Actually, I went down to 17, but I was already doing my A-levels at that time. My father was a sort of ex-miner, became a college lecturer. And in them days, football probably wasn't, that proper job type of thing. And that you needed something to fall back on, just in case, football, you could get injured or you just didn't make it. So I actually completed my studies till I was 18. Even though I had the chance to sign for the Swans professionally at 17, I stayed on for the extra year to finish my A-levels. I then started at 18 years of age. But I've always been glad that, I didn't... I mean, we take them as young as 6, 7 years of age now. And I just think it's always too young. We have to take them because everybody else does exactly the same. But I think I was allowed to sort of develop myself and always learn from your own mistakes. And I think whatever creativity and flair that you had, it was never coached out to me. I don't say, don't get me wrong, I mean, I've seen some of our young kids and they're terrific on the ball and they're so clever and technically so good. But I just think that there was like a freedom to the way that I was allowed to play. Even when I sort of come into the professional game, you had to be much more aware tactically, I suppose, and you had to know your job. But I knew that when I had the ball, then I had the freedom to do whatever. And I think that certainly I always felt that made me a better player.
For those listening who aren't from your era, just describe to us Alan Curtis, the footballer. What was he like? What was his skills? What could he do on the football pitch?
Right, I could do everything. My mother thought I was the best player in the world. No, well, I don't know. I mean, I was two-footed. I think that I was generally two-footed. Obviously right-footed, but I mean, I had a practice enough on my left foot, and it became natural in the end to sort of kick left-footed. Not very good in the air. Certainly, it's something that I probably should have worked on, but didn't. But I like to run at people, and sort of to run with the ball. I probably could have scored. I was told one time that I wasn't a scorer. I wasn't a great scorer of goals, but I was a scorer of great goals, which I was quite happy with that one. I seem to be almost all the goals that I scored tended to be quality goals rather than maybe little tap-ins. So I actually enjoyed that. It was meant as a compliment, and I certainly took it as such as that. So I would say that the ability to run at people and really to sort of again maybe sort of get the crowd on their feet a little bit.
You mentioned earlier about your uncle, being your inspiration. Played for Swansea himself. What was it like then to follow in his footsteps when you first came through?
Well, it's to say, I mean, when I first came, I was always Alan Curtis, never of Roy Paul, but people would, again, repeating myself, people would say, do you find that a little bit irritating, a little bit annoying? But I certainly didn't, because he was such a great player. But of course, school at the top of the street, literally sort of across the road, the junior school is top of the road. I remember coming back from school, I would probably been about, 8 or 9 maybe. And in those days, they used to deliver coal in the street. And I sort of coming down, the fellows were delivering coal in the street as they would every sort of couple of weeks. And fellas, covered head to toe in coal dust. I don't know. And of course, I'm looking, and all I can see are these 3 or 4 men just covered, as I say, head to toe, and it's my Uncle Roy, and that would have been no more than about 5 or 6 years after the cup final. I couldn't believe it, I mean, I probably wasn't aware how great a football player he was at that particular time, but it was always something like, God, I was my Uncle Roy, this great football player. I was here delivering coal in the street. But again, that was something that I've always sort of remembered and put into place. So, and it brought back the words of my father. Really, football was not a proper job, and if you don't, something to fall back on. But even at that young age, it was a little bit of a shock to see him delivering coal. You just can't imagine somebody captain them in 2 cup finals, captain Wales as well. Doing some sort of they wouldn't be delivering coal, but something as menial as that. It was even then at 8 or 9 years of age, it was like almost like a bizarre feeling.
Yeah, there's no modern day equivalent to that, is there? Really?
No, it was really strange. But as I say, Uncle Roy, I mean, he was always he was. I wouldn't say he was on tap all the time, but he would usually sort of call up, my mother was one of 14 children.
Wow.
So we'd go down. We'd always go down at a younger age, and go and sort of visit the grandparents and stuff like that. And they were all they were born in like a 2-bedroom terrace house.
A lot of bunk beds there.
But they said well, where do you all sleep? And they would be under the tables. They would be, everybody would be topping and tailing, and it's like, I mean, how did they ever manage? But always at some stage we'd go out in the street and we'd have a game of football. And Uncle Roy lived across the road, literally across the road. You're talking about 15 yards across the street there.
Oh, you've got enough players there.
And then we'd come out and we'd all have a game of football. So and I can remember that, and I remember thinking then, you can tell he could. He's lovely. Even then, he was still a good striker of a ball and things like that.
Take us back to when you started playing, though. In the 1970s, quite an iconic era for football. What was the game like then in that environment coming through?
It was. Well, you've only got to look at the pitches. The pitches. I think everybody tried to play football, to be fair. But I mean, the pitches, the footballs were okay, to be fair. They were nothing like the footballs in the big heavy laced ones. We sort of thankfully to come out of that. But it was a tough physical league. I mean, when I first started, I think we were in the old 3rd division, and there are lots of sort of big uncompromising defenders there. They wouldn't think twice about sort of booting you into the stand. So you quickly had to learn. I remember my first game was at Southend on a Friday night, and there's something about night games that always seem to be just that much quicker. And I got substituted after about an hour or so. I remember thinking, good job I got those A levels, because I'm probably going to need them quite quickly to get some sort of. It was just the pace of the game. The pace of the game was something that you couldn't replicate. You thought you were ready for it, but it was just the game just sort of flew past me. And but in time, you eventually come to the pace of the game. I think you get the physical side of it as well, and you probably need to play a little bit quicker. Whereas before, so you like to take people on, and I think certainly if you went past the fullback maybe once, or certainly no more than twice, then usually the third time, then there was going to be some sort of retribution from the fullback. He tried to do anything to maim you, really.
They could get away with it in those days.
You could literally get away with murder in those days. I don't remember people. Some games. We would. It just seemed to be the teams would absolutely just kick lumps out of each other.
Yeah, I was watching back this week actually. Leeds derby from the 70s, and
was that the one?
The infamous one with I think it was Norman Hunter
and Franny Lee was there.
Yeah, Franny Lee, and neither of them got a red card.
Well, John Hollins managed the Swans for a while. I was assistant manager to John, and he was saying that was it 70, the Leeds and Chelsea Cup final. I don't know if you've seen footage of that. Especially the first game, but they said the one at Old Trafford. He said he was looking around. He said there was only me, and there was somebody else from United. Somebody else from might have been Eddie. We were the only two of them who weren't fighting. They said there were fights breaking out all over the place. He said, I'm looking at there's 3 or 4 fighting there, and there's somebody punching each other over there. And he said it was everywhere. And he said that was the game. That was the game.
Did you ever, play in your position, not really in like a combative centre back, or did you ever worry for yourself on a football pitch back then that you could get involved in something like that?
Well,
you have to be streetwise.
You should. I can remember lashing back at the times. Again, I'm sure if nowadays you can't agree with anything, can you? But I remember, some fellas sort of I can't remember who it was. No, some fellas sort of kicking me, and I just turned around and just belted him back, and that's probably what you had to do. If you didn't, then they would continue to sort of to bully you, I suppose. But it was a tough old league in them days, and especially if you're a young player coming through, maybe starting to build a reputation, then the younger the older pros, I should say, they loved actually playing against somebody who perhaps they sort of were slipping down the leagues. There's nothing better for them than to sort of to match up against somebody who tried to aspire to get to the top league. So it could be a little bit. But we had enough on our team. I mean, we had people. Well, believe it or not, our physio was Harry Griffiths, who managed the club. But he would never come on 3 times. He would come on and maybe treat a player one time, and then if he had to do it a second time, then he wouldn't go on for the 3rd time. If one of our players went down 3rd, he would just look the other way. He always used to say, "I'll come on twice," he said, "but make sure one of their players now, make sure that their physio comes on to treat one of their players. If there's a 3rd one, I'm not coming on." You could have like with a broken leg, and Harry would have looked the other way, and he would not have gone on the 3rd time. That was the type of culture it was, Of
course, that's not something we condone nowadays. A tough few years though on the pitch for Swansea when you first came through, but you seemed to thrive in that environment, didn't you? On your own personal performances, you seemed to come through and do well.
Yeah, well, the first couple of years were really tough, I've got to say. I mean, Roy Bentley was the manager when I first came to the club, ex-Chelsea in England, and I only had a season with him before he left, and then Harry Gregg took over there, and he loved the physical side of the game. In fact, the first corner, I remember the first corner that we used to practice. I mean, basically all I had to do was put the ball down, try to chip it so that the goalkeeper would come for it. And we'd just get our 3 biggest players just to smash the goalkeeper. See if we could knock him out. That's what he said, trying to knock him out. And so all he had to do was basically just chip it in the air. And then the keeper would come for it, and then, we would just smash it. So, I mean, we just stopped playing football altogether. It was... we'd usually win our first corner when we were 3-0 down. But by this time, nothing really mattered. So he was... I loved Harry. We all loved Harry to bits, but I mean, the style of play was not really sort of suited to lots of not only me, but some of the the players who were just about coming through that. The big change for me was when Harry Griffiths, the physio that I told you about, he actually took over, and I mean, Harry was part of quite a famous sort of team back in the 50s, certainly locally anyway, the Swansea team. People there was Harry, but you had the likes of Cliffy Jones, Terry Medwin. Mel Charles, Mel Nurse played. The Ivor Allchurch, Lenny Allchurch. They were such. They went on to sort of. Cliffy and Terry both went on to play for Spurs in the double winning team. So that era, it was. I mean, that team sort of graced the old second division, and really should have. Nobody can understand how they didn't get promoted to that top flight. And I think if the club had gone to the top flight with all the players coming through, we lost Big John as well, John Charles to Leeds, as a 15-year-old. I mean, if we'd been in the first division, and if John had stayed, I mean, God knows, I mean, that team could have been anything. You're talking about world class players.
Of course, John Charles, for people who don't know, one of the most famous
Oh.
British players of all time, one of the best British players of all time. Playing for Juventus in.
Well, John again, he came back as a coach for a little spell, and played for Juventus. But he was actually picked in the World 11 at centre half and a centre forward. A World 11. He was that good. They used to say, play him up front, he'd score, he'd be winning 1-0, and then all of a sudden, as soon as they scored, and John would score, then they put him back to centre half and he'd just defend for the rest of the game. So he was a phenomenal player. But if they, Swansea's always been a good area for. But when Harry came in, though, as I say, he changed the culture. He went what he called it even back then, the Swansea way. And then there was myself. There was people like Robbie James, Wyndham Evans, Nigel Stevenson, Jeremy Charles. Then we had a lot of younger players coming through, and because Swansea has always been a good area for producing players. And then we just started to play, and the crowd started to sort of come back a little bit. Then of course again, then they accelerated even further with Josh coming in, and that was back in 76ish, isn't it, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about John there. That's actually my next question. When he did come in, it was towards the end of the 70s. Did you know then he was going to be special for the club? Could you tell straight away that he was on to something which was going to be, take Swansea right to the top?
Well, he actually said in the first meeting that he had that we will take the club. He is going to take the club, and we are going to go with him alongside him. We were going to go and play in the first division within 6 years, and of course, we all looked a little bit strangely at him, put it that way. But he was. I'd known Tosh anyway because we were sort of playing colleagues. I had just broken into the Welsh team, and so I'd known. Funny enough, there was speculation that he might take over, and he said, "No chance." He was at Liverpool, one of the best clubs in Europe at the time. He suffered a few injuries, but I mean, he was sort of coming back to fitness. And literally within a couple of weeks, he's actually walked into a changing room as our new player manager. But he always had a belief about him, Tosh, that you follow me type of thing and be successful. And I think that we were all sort of taken in by it. Whether we believed that we were going to get into the first division, I think many people. I think historically the club had only ever played in the second division, never played in the top flight. So even for us to get from from fourth division as it was to the second division would have been wow, that would have been some achievement. But to go all the way, I don't think many people thought it could happen. But I think the more that you were with him, then and as I say, results started to roll, and the crowds again, they doubled with Harry because of the way that we were playing. But all of a sudden you got the Tosh factor. And then they started to triple. We were getting 18,000-20,000 crowds at the Vetch again, which they hadn't done for years and years. And then we just this momentum started going, and then we go fourth, third, and obviously second, and we end up in the first division, which was incredible. Really, it was a fantastic journey to be on. But yeah, I mean, Tosh was, even though Harry I think sort of instigated it, but Tosh obviously has to take a huge amount of credit for the belief I think that he had, and and the belief that he instilled into the players as well.
And of course, playing under John Toshak at the time, you got your move to Leeds United, a massive football club in the 70s. When you came in on a bit of a downturn towards the end of the 70s, what was that move like for you, and how did it come about?
Well, Jimmy Adamson was the manager of Leeds. Funny enough, he tried to sign me like a year or two before when he was manager of Sunderland, and. But and Leeds at the time were certainly a top four club. They talk about the top four in the Premier League these days. But Leeds were in that bracket at the time, and it was one of those. Even though you knew that the club, we'd got promotion back to the second division, and even though you knew that there was a strong possibility that there's going to be a big push to get into the first division by the Swans. But Leeds was such a big, massive, well-established club, and already sort of, I think they finished maybe runners-up, or certainly in the top four anyway. So it was them and Liverpool who were sort of vying for the titles. So it was almost a no-brainer really. Even though there was a certain reluctance to go because you didn't want to leave this bandwagon that was going so well at Swansea.
And personally as well, so far away from Swansea.
Yeah, but it wasn't so much that. It's funny, Brian Flynn was there, Carl Harris, Brian Stevenson, Glenn Leatheran were players there. Actually, the groundsman was from Britain Ferry up in Neath, up the road. I think we had the clergy. He was a Welsh boy as well, so there was like quite a big sort of Welsh connection. And I obviously knew the boys from the Welsh team, and so it was much easier to settle in. But it was just the sheer size. You're probably overwhelmed a little bit by the sheer size of the club. Things went well. I enjoyed it certainly at the start. I mean, it was great. It was fantastic to be at such a big club, and it all went well up until the third round of the cup in January. We played Forest, and then sort of chased the ball, could play over the top, and then Peter Shilton just got there before me. He dived under my feet, and then unfortunately my foot got trapped under his body, and sort of ripped all the ligaments, and it ripped all the hamstring, came off the bone, and I was out for about I think it was over 9 months, just over 9 months, which effectively killed my time there really, because Jimmy Adamson, who had signed me, had been replaced by Alan Clark. Alan Clark, obviously, one of the Sniffer, one of the great players at Leeds. And I think that he wanted to sort of bring his own people in. And I had the chance as well to sort of come back to Swansea. They had one season in the second division, but would go in quite nicely in the second division of that campaign. And really within 20 months, from having this dream move to Leeds, that injury and maybe a change of management sort of took it away from me. But, it was a chance when I came back to Swansea. It was a question of rebuilding my career a little bit, but also as well being part of this sort of, this bandwagon, as I said before, of taking the club into the first division for the first ever time.
That must have been a dream experience for you, growing up with the club, holding it so dear at the time. Just tell us about, winning promotion, what that meant to the club at the time, and how you did it.
Well, we had never played in the top flight, obviously, as a club. Even though I always find it amazing that the players' quality, the ones we talked about, Ivor Allchurch, Cliffy, Terry, that so we felt as if we were sort of right in the wrong a little bit. We had we were smattered in. I think 7 or 8 of the team were people from the Swansea area. I include myself in that. I was only like 40 minutes away. So there was a tremendous feeling of pride in the team as well, and that we were sort of representing the city and the surrounding areas. But the football that we played, Tosh, I had experienced part of it anyway. Sort of a couple of years. I'd gone back to the club where there was the majority of the players were still the same. We'd made a few additions. We were one of the first to sign. We signed 2 Yugoslav internationals, Ante Rajkovic and Jimmy as his name was, Hazi Abdic, both internationals. So we had a really strong team as well, and the football. And then I think everybody sort of got really caught up in it. There was a huge buzz. Every time we played, big buzz in the city as well. The fact that we were going to be as close to getting to the first division as a club had ever been before.
I think that buzz was shown obviously in the game against Preston, that final game of the season. You saw how the city and the club came together there.
Yeah, it did. The games we played Luton. Funny enough, we played them at the Vetch on the Tuesday before the Preston game, and we drew the game 2-2. And we knew then that going into that last game against Preston, if we were to win it, then a couple of other teams could have caught us. But if we were to win the game, then it was all over. So we knew beforehand that we were going to, what we had to do, which is great. Knowing that, to say, to get the 2 points would have got us promotion. And the buzz throughout the week was phenomenal. We went up on the Friday. I think it said we took 10,000, but I must have spoken to at least 30,000 people, 50,000 people probably, who said they were at Preston that day. And it's funny because Preston, in '64, Preston had got to the. we played Preston in the semi-final of the FA Cup. Preston beat the Swans at 2-1. So you felt, again, that it was obviously the perfect setting. Not a chance for revenge, because I think Preston, they might have been relegated that season. So they were desperate for the points themselves. So we went up there, and first half, we played exceptionally well. We were 2-0 up. We scored 2 early goals. Tommy Craig, and Leighton James. And but second half, they just bombarded us, Preston. They pulled one back, 2-1, and then they did everything but score. They balls were flashing past, but eventually, we sort of weathered the storm a little bit, and then we came out. I actually sort of broke down the right end. All I was trying to do was to run the ball in the corner, just kill a little bit of time, and then looked up, so passed it on to Robbie James. Robbie James, was a fantastic, probably the best player that I'd ever played with at Swansea. Into Robbie. And Robbie, unusually for him, miscontrolled it, passed it on to Jeremy Charles, and then Charles scored like a left foot screamer, to be fair to him, which is totally unlike him on his left foot. And then 3-1 with probably like 2 minutes to go. So we knew almost that we had those couple of minutes to actually take it in a little bit before the referee before he blew the whistle. But it was a fantastic experience. I mean, it probably, I said, the 2 games for enough, and we'll talk about that. Obviously the Leeds game, the first game after, but the two best games of my career were the Preston game, and obviously the Leeds game when we played in the start of the first division. But it was such a great journey too, even though I'd missed a little bit of it. But you were still involved in all the promotions, and you just felt for everybody it was just a sense of relief that at last we got to that that hallowed land, so to speak. But it was a great experience, not only for us as players, but for the city and the area as a whole.
You've just guessed my next question. Obviously, is about that Leeds game, the first game.
Yeah.
The season afterwards. Well, what a performance! Thrashing, Leeds United. What was that like for you as well? Obviously, coming from previously playing for Leeds, what was that? What did that performance mean to you?
I think it meant a huge amount to everybody. I mean, obviously for me personally, because I had left Leeds like 6 months before, and Alan Clark was the manager. We sort of, he wanted to change, and which is, to be expected. New manager comes in, he wants to change things around. But and people say that you've nothing to prove, but I think every player, when you play against your own club, you want to sort of prove, not prove a point that they were wrong. It's just the fact that you want to play well against them, and. But it could have gone any better for us. We got a great start again. Jeremy got the first goal. And then, to be fair to Leeds, they clawed themselves back into the game. 1-1 at half time. Derek Pallian, I think it was. And then, but second half, we went out. I mean, Tosh was, not that he said great amount apart from, to keep playing. I mean, he was quite calm. He's usually quite calm all the time, Tosh. And then second half, we within, say, 20 minutes or so, Bob Blatchford has scored a hat-trick. And then I scored probably one of the most satisfying goals, I would say. Not satisfying in terms because he was against Leeds, but the way the first game in the first division, and the way he scored it, and we eventually beat him 5-1, and it was such a dream start for us, and it gave us a belief and a momentum that we carried on then for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I was going to say, how important was that result for the rest of the season? Because you finished 6th eventually,
yeah.
But I mean, it could have been so much better from what I've heard previously in your interview.
We actually could have won it. It's only probably years later, but we actually could have won the league that year. I think we were top of the table with about 10 games to go. I mean, Liverpool won it in the end, and they won it quite comfortably. I think we were never out of the top 6. We probably should have finished at least if we hadn't won it. And I certainly wouldn't decry Liverpool. They were such a great team in those days. But it was probably the best opportunity that we'd ever going to have. To have won a league title, but we rested a couple of players at the end because it was a Welsh Cup final, and that for us was entry into Europe. We were playing Cardiff as well, so we rested people, and I think we lost probably I would say 4 of the last 5 games. Whereas if we'd probably kept the strongest team, we certainly could have finished runners up maybe, and got a lot closer to Liverpool. As I say, with 10 to go, we had a great chance to have even won it. But I mean, you still look back. I mean, it's memories. You know, we did the double over Arsenal. We beat Spurs, I think, who were the UEFA Cup champ. No, the FA Cup holders. Liverpool were the European. Aston Villa were the European champions. Liverpool were the league champions. You know, and we just you know turned over United. We beat Ipswich. Who were a great team in those days. And you know, they were just games that you just remember for the rest of your life. You know, a lot of them are still, you know, almost as clear as day.
Yeah, personally, it sounds as if that was the best period of your professional career, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would say that, you know, even though you enjoyed, you know, different spells at different clubs, but I mean, you know, I would say that period, going up probably from the fourth to the first, but certainly that first year in the first division, that's probably the best I played and the most, you know, the most memorable and best times of my career, absolutely.
You then eventually moved on again to Southampton. Were you ready for the move that time, do you believe?
Well, for the club a little bit it is at the moment. You know, we hit problems financially. We you know, we bought players that, and be known to us, you know, you know, we never had the finances to pay them. So in the end, we were literally sort of having to let players go. I think I went down to Southampton. I was told, like, you know, you're going to have to go from a financial perspective. You know, there's, if you don't go, the club's going to fold and this type of thing. But Southampton at the time was a good move. You know, I mean, Laurie McNenemy was the manager. They had some real good pros in. McMills was there. Peter Shilton was there. I think Frank was there. Frank Worthington. Later on, they signed Joe Jordan. Jimmy Case played down there. Plus, you know, they were the likes of Danny Wallace, there was Steve Williams, there was Mark Wright coming through. So it was a really sort of good blend. And Southampton was very similar to the Swans, and the Dell was a little bit like the Vet. He was quite enclosed, crowd right on top of him. So in the end, it probably, and it got me back into to play in the first division. Unfortunately, a little bit like at Leeds, you know, injuries seemed to, you know, just... You just seem to every time you got yourself fit, then you'd pick up another injury, and I don't know why that was. I mean, suffered from hamstrings, which I'd never really sort of suffered before. So even though it should have been a good move, I mean, it turned out to be a little bit disappointing in the end. But it was a great club, Southampton, and you know, it sort of 2.5, 3 years down there, and you know, sort of really enjoyed it.
Well, then after that, of course, back to Wales and back to Cardiff. Did you feel like at the time you were joining, you know, the arch enemy, I suppose? Did you feel like you were a traitor?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I remember when because Frank Burrows had actually left Southampton. The reason I signed for Southampton, I signed for Cardiff, was Frank had left our youth team, managed the youth team, got on well with Frank, and he had taken over Cardiff and said, "Oh, you know, I want you to come and play with me at Cardiff." I said, "Oh, that would be impossible, Frank. I couldn't do that." I actually talked to the Swans, but we had slipped into administration. It's funny, even though that time in the first division was brilliant, it took us probably took us about 15, 20 years to recover from it. You know, it was just a financial situation. It was just left a terrible mess there. I couldn't sign there because they were in administration. They weren't able to sign anybody. So in the end, you know, I remember phoning up the players. Some of the players I talked about. I spoke to Robbie James, Jimmy Charles, Wyndham Evans, Nigel Stevens about, you know, what do you think I should do? Like, you know, sign for Cardiff. It's, yeah, you know, sign for Cardiff. It's you know, it's you're doing a professional job type of thing, and no problem. And then I don't think they spoke to me then for about 6 months after I signed. You know, radio silence. And it was really strange. I've got to say, the first season up there was difficult. I think we weren't a particularly good team for one, and I think everything that all the ills on the field, you know, I was put on my shoulders type of thing, you know.
The fans not really
get on your back, and it was like, you know, get back to Swansea. Got all sorts of names, but funny enough, you won them over to the point that I actually won the Player of the Year at the end of that season with them. Second season, we made a couple of signings. We got so much better. We actually got promotion that year, and we won the Welsh Cup. I think the first time Cardiff had won it for about 15, 16 years. So in the end, it actually turned out to be a far better move than I thought it was going to be a bit of a nightmare. Again, part of the reason because we wanted to sort of to come back to South Wales to learn the kids were growing up, and so Cardiff was probably well, there's only choice of two anyway. It was only going to be Cardiff or Swansea. Swansea couldn't do it, but Cardiff. But as I say, it turned out quite well at the end, and a good couple of seasons there. But say thankfully, which is probably your next question, then you ended up with another opportunity to re-sign again for the Swans. So it was for the third time that Ian Evans, again sort of colleague of mine in the Welsh team, had taken over, and there was an opportunity to go and play for them. So it was great. I mean, I couldn't have scripted even better at all. The fact that I started my career and finished my career as well.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question there. What did it? Did you always want it to be like that?
Oh yeah,
to start and end at Swansea.
I think it would have been difficult for me. I may not have sort of contributed again to the club if I'd have finished my career at Cardiff. I think that it might have been difficult, but the fact that you sort of finished there, then I wouldn't say that they've obviously forgiven me now. The supporters and stuff like that. That's long gone. But it was great for me, and I think it just sort of rounded things off nicely. To have started almost like a middle part, and then to come back right at the end. It sort of laid a few goals, so to speak.
Of course, you've gone on after your playing career to fulfil so many roles at the club. Which one did you enjoy the most, though?
It's funny, I never really wanted to go into management. I enjoyed the coaching side of it, but never the management side. Assistant manager was fine. I think part of the strength was my strength as a coach was always, the manager's got so many things. I've been caretaker quite a few times, and to be honest, I really enjoyed that. Even though I just said that I didn't want to go into management, sometimes it's thrust upon you, and I enjoyed it. It was, but probably knowing full well that it was only going to be for a period of time. Sometimes I went on a little bit longer than I envisaged, but I did enjoy that. But I thought my sort of strength was always a sort of link between the players and the manager. Rather than the players got a problem, then they come and see me, and then either I would sort it out, or if it was deemed, right, I'd speak to the manager and then speak to him. So I was that link between the players and the manager, and the manager could trust me, and the players could trust me, and I just felt more comfortable doing that. But I've had so many roles down there. I mean, from when I first went back to the club, it was a football in the community scheme, which was just filtering down south. I did that for many years. Then you move into the youth team. Then you sort of move up to the first team as a coach. Then you assistant manager in the club, caretaker manager in a few spells. Then I sort of dropped back down. I was head of youth. Then I was looking after the reserve team. Then I did the hospitality for years. Then I was the loan manager. You come back into the coaching, and it's almost been
full circle.
Yeah, it's full circle, and you've sort of dipped in, you've dipped out, and so it's been almost 40 years sort of association with the club, and it's you say 40 years, and it's a hell of a long time, and yet it seems to have just disappeared and vanished so very, very quickly.
I want to focus now on the time when one of the most difficult times for the club, when they almost dropped out of the league. Another pivotal moment for the club, the match against Hull in 2003, the final day. You gave quite a rousing speech to the players, I believe. What was said in that speech, and why did it work?
Well, it was the last game. The game against Preston, we knew that we had to win, get promotion to the old First Division. But this game, we had to beat Hull to make sure that we kept our league status. If we'd have lost or even drawn, I think it was, then we would have been relegated into the conference. So things like the Liberty Stadium, Premier League, that has happened since that probably would never have happened. And I just wanted, the game was so important, and you tried to sort of, we said, I've got to keep the players, keep them out of pressure, but in the end, there was no there was no hiding, no disguising the fact that this was. Never mind all the games that we've played since, finals, playoff finals. That was the most important game in the club's history, and I just felt it was important that the players understood, how important it was, what it meant to everybody. So I just pulled them all in before the game in a huddle and just said all. I'd sort of rehearsed it with our physio, Richard Evans, who's now Roberto's assistant at Belgium. And his father, part of the thing that his father had sort of passed away only sort of couple of months before. And literally Brian, Richard's father, who was an ex-player that I played with, had said, almost with his last breath was, you've got to make sure that the Swans don't go down. So I said, is it right if I use that, Rich? And so, yeah, absolutely. So it was just little things like that, that Richard's father, Brian, even on his deathbed, saying, you can't let the Swans go down. To tell the players, to stress to them how important the game was. The fact that we had been in the first division something like 20 odd years before, and then had been top of the first division. How the 58 World Cup team in Wales qualified for the only time at that particular time. 6 or 7 of that team, were all Swansea-born players, and about the young players in the city, in the area, in the team, how important it was for them that we remained, that we kept our Football League status. And also as well, Roger Freestone, who had played 600-700 games for the club, it was his testimonial here and how important that we remained a Football League club for Roger to enjoy his time at the club, to sort of round it all off. So, and I guess it was probably the emotion that I spoke with it as well, that I could feel myself welling up, but it's determined obviously not to. But I think with the emotion plus, whatever, words you said, I think it sort of, I just had to get that message across the plate. I felt as if I hadn't done it, then it would have been something that I would have really regretted, and especially if it had gone the wrong way. But thankfully the game. James Thomas, scored a hat-trick, scored a brilliant hat-trick, 2 penalties, and one fantastic chip goal. We win the game 4-2, and we almost had to sort of drop to that lowest point almost. And then I would say from there, then that started that sort of process of, we stopped the rot a little bit, then we improved next year, and then eventually, we find ourselves, but 7-8 years later, actually in the Premier League. So that was a huge game, probably the most important game in the club's history.
In that time, like I said, after that match, the club went on this massive upward curve. Under so many different managers, different influences, who had the biggest impact in that time? Who would you, if you had to choose any of them, was responsible for that turnaround of Swansea Football Club at that time?
A little bit like Harry Griffiths did, when he took over. But I would say Roberto Martinez. He's the one who started the culture of the football that we wanted to play. And we gained a reputation for playing from the back, always trying to sort of, maybe a little bit too much football at times, and maybe keeping the ball for keepsake almost. But Roberto started the process. I think he was lucky that we were in League One at the time, and there were lots of mistakes in the early days, but we didn't get punished. So it encouraged the players to get better and better. With Roberto, there wasn't, it was a plan A. There was no plan B. Plan A had to get better. And it was same thing. We did relentlessly every day. Everybody would have a ball each, and passing drills, possession drills, and then to the point that the football that we played, going out of League One, people said, "Oh, you can't play football in League One," but we were absolutely brilliant, and into the Championship as well. And again, some of the football that we played was superb. Really, really top class stuff. So I would say Roberto. I think Brendan, when Brendan came in, other people then came in after Roberto left. He left to go back to Wigan. Brendan came in, and again he just lifted the club again. With we went to like another level again, and some of the football, from the Championship to the first season in the Premier League. It was as good as anything that you've seen. Be it on television or actually live. Michael Laudrup came in sort of after Brendan, and again, he probably raised the bar again. Some of the performances. We played a game against West Brom in the Premier League, and for 45 minutes I've never seen football, like 1 and 2 touch. For 45 minutes we were absolutely world class. And people who were there today still talk about it. You think the game against West Brom, a midweek game against West Brom, but for 45 minutes we were absolutely, it was perfect, absolutely perfect. We led 3-0, and it could have been 6 or 7 with the post, keeping them in, unbelievable saves. But the football was so good that you actually couldn't believe your eyes, the football that you were watching. But Roberto started the process. Manager sort of came and improved, but the actual process itself was started by Roberto, and he's got to take a huge amount of credit for that.
But of course, it was Michael Laudrup who brought you in as his first team assistant, and that was probably one of the most successful periods.
Yeah.
After obviously the infrastructure had been put into place. What did it mean to you to work under such a revered name like that and to have so much success? The League Cup.
Yeah, the League Cup to win a major trophy for us was, it was something that I probably never ever envisaged. I've got to say, you don't expect a club like Swansea to, with all due respect to the great players and the great teams that have played in the past, to actually win a major trophy. And he was in our centenary year as well. No, but Michael came in, and again, he was quiet and assuming. But I remember first couple of years in the Premier League, the opposition, you line up before you go out, and the opposition would look at the players, and I wouldn't say with a little bit of disdain, but they'd like, it's only Swansea at the end of the day. But when Michael took over, Michael would walk out, and then he would sort of stand at the front of our players, and to see their players looking at Michael was like, they were like, what's Michael doing? And when you look like the likes of Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard looking at Michael Laudrup, and then that gave our players a huge lift and a big confidence booster. And Michael was great. I mean, he was great to work with. I mean, he was such a laid back character anyway. So he let you get on with a lot of your own stuff. But he was great to work with, and it was again, those couple of years were probably the best period of the club's history.
And then, of course, you worked under Gary. How did those sort of styles contrast? Gary Monk, obviously, his first season as a manager.
It was difficult for Gary. I mean, I think he was probably placed in a difficult position. I mean, he was. They felt a change needed to be made. I probably disagree a little bit, but but to be fair to Gary, he wasn't afraid to take over the mantle, and he learned on the job. I mean, the second season, I think his first full season in charge, we finished 8th in the table, and I think that's our highest ever finish it was our highest ever finish in the Premier League. Obviously, we had finished 6th in the old First Division, and we had some fantastic results. To go to Old Trafford and to beat United, and I think we did the double over Arsenal. We had some really great victories, but I think Gary was still learning his trade as time went on, and probably the Premier League is not the place to learn it. You actually need to be almost the finished article before you go into it. So Gary did terrific, but I think that his lack of experience at the end sort of counted against him. Results, we started to get a few bad results, and then all of a sudden, the rot sort of set in a little bit, and then we just went through a period where we seemed to be appointing people, almost every other season.
But focusing on that time with Gary, did you have a lot of involvement in that period? Did you sort of feel as if, obviously Gary being so inexperienced, did you feel as if he needed to take some of the pressure off?
I tried to help him as much as I could, but he had his Pep quartet who he's taken with him, sort of here, there and everywhere. He brought James Beattie in, and I think he probably sort of, I remember actually saying that he wanted to have a really young and dynamic bench, so when people look over, the opposition bench looked over, they would see this young dynamic bench, and I'm not quite sure with my grey hair how I was going to sort of fit into that. But he said, obviously, I'm not talking about Kurt, but I actually didn't sit on the bench for a lot of it. I actually sort of moved just behind the bench, or even sat up in the stands to have a sort of different view and a different perspective of it. and then would speak to him at half time or at the end of the game, depending on how things went. So I probably didn't have quite the hands-on as I did, and say Michael then, or even Brendan or Roberta, can say.
But for you, after that difficult period with Gary, you came in.
Yeah,
you helped a difficult time for the club. Obviously no situation for a caretaker manager is an easy one. But what was that like to have? I suppose having the honour of managing the club, but then at the same time the responsibility of it.
Oh, well, it was a huge responsibility because we'd gone through a bad period. I think that I can't remember now, but we think we won win in 11 or 12. Actually, our first game was against Man City, and I remember sort of looking at the being out in the middle of the pitch and looking up, and actually see my Uncle Roy's name up, sort of all the captains of the club, and we played really well that day. We actually conceded a goal. We were 1-0 down. 1-1, we pulled it back 1-1, 8 minutes from time. Played really well second half. I think they were the champions at the time. And then they scored a deflected goal in something like the 3rd minute, eventually 4th minute. But at least there was a performance that, raised everybody's spirits a little bit, because the boys did play a little bit of football, and then we had some decent results after that. We I can't remember them all now, but the important thing, I think, was to get the boys to get their belief back again and to get the principles back. I think we'd probably lost our way a little bit in terms of the way that we wanted to play, the way that Roberta would instill in the players, and Brendan and Michael had taken on. And really, it was for me when I took over, is to try to get them back playing football again. And probably to a small measure, I think I probably succeeded in that.
And you played a very important part in keeping the club in the division. Obviously, Francesco Guidolin came in. What was his involvement like after you had done quite well yourself in charge of the club? But what was that like for you to bring when someone came in who's quite alien to the club? I think I can remember his command of English wasn't fantastic.
No, he wasn't great. I mean, he had a couple of assistants. One particularly, sort of spoke decent English. But yeah, it was difficult because I think that it's never quite the same if you go through an interpreter to speak them. He had probably better English than people imagine, but he didn't like particularly talking certainly to the press and stuff like that. He did it, but it was under a little bit of duress. But no, I mean, but he was a lovely man. He perhaps he had a slightly Italian mentality in terms of we didn't have maybe the freedom of expression that some of the other managers had. But he was a nice man, lovely to work for. But he had a spell, funny enough, where he picked up a really sort of nasty sort of chest infection or a throat infection. So I did take a couple of games while he was away, and we actually beat Arsenal at the Emirates, and when we beat Norwich was probably the bigger game on the Saturday. So we picked up 6 points in a crucial period.
You must take a massive pride in that.
Yeah, especially the Arsenal game, because we'd been written off, obviously. But to come in and to sort of to get the boys around and no fluke results as well. We played really, really well in both games, and so that was obviously pleasing as well.
Just tell us now about that period that followed, a difficult period for the club. Like you mentioned there, Francesco sort of veered away from what seemed to be at the time the Swansea sort of way of playing football. There seemed to be a change of identity in terms of how the club wanted to play football, and with the likes of Bob Bradley brought in. Didn't really,
But Bob, I think he had about 8-10 games, something like that. I mean,
you didn't really get back to that way of playing, did you?
No, we didn't. No, and I think we panicked, to be honest with you. I think the club panicked, the hierarchy panicked in terms of making changes when there possibly wasn't a need to. And I think it was just the desperation for us to stay in the league. I think we made a couple of the only way to describe it are poor signings. We made a lot of poor signings, and we gave inflated fees. For us, massive wages, that the club couldn't afford. Just for this desperation to stay in the league, and we just lost our style totally. The style of play which we'd been famous for in many ways. We held up as a role model, of a small club coming through, but still playing the football. I mean, everybody would say that, you know, most clubs have got an identity, but, you know, people will say, what do you know about Swansea? Oh, they're a good footballing team. You know, they like to play football. They want to play football. They're encouraged to play football. And we just came away from that totally, and it was just a desperation to get results. And then we just lost the whole vision of the club that the club had, and ultimately, you know, we had a couple of narrow squeaks with relegation. We just about managed to save ourselves, but we didn't really learn the lesson till eventually it catches up with you. And you know, we were relegated after 7 years, I think it was, in the Premier League. Which, and you know, they were 7 fantastic years, but the last couple were really difficult. Not the fact that we were relegated, it's just the way we were relegated. If we'd been relegated, trying to play the way that we did, we would have said, okay, we weren't good enough. But I think that we lost away from the blueprint that we had, and it was sad. You know, we'd be watching games. I was doing the loan manager then, and I didn't get to see all the games because I was catching up on the different players away. But you know, you'd go to see it, and it was like watching a different team, even though you recognise the players on the pitch, but they just weren't playing the style of play that we should have played in the way that they were brought in to play the style. I mean, the players we were all brought in had to be comfortable on the ball and play our way, but we were just, you know, playing everything was long and, you know, in the corners, and it just didn't look like a Swansea team. And say we paid the price then, and thankfully, I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun again, but Graham came in last year, Graham Potter, and again we reintroduced the style again. We lost 16 players this time last year, and we had to rely upon a lot of the younger players, a lot of the players who had actually been out on loan, and some of them didn't even play at the particular clubs that they had gone to, like Joe Rodney, young centre half, went to Cheltenham. Only played probably half the games. Conor Roberts from Middlesbrough hardly played at all. Matt Grimes played at Northampton, but were relegated. But he was a revelation last year. Ollie McBurney went to Barnsley. He actually did quite well at Barnsley, but they were relegated. So they were, you know, a lot of the boys are sort of mixed reviews a little bit with him, but they brought back into the team. You know, Graham introduced him to the team last year, got him playing the way that, you know, we hopefully want all our teams to play. And last season, even though, you know, we sort of missed out, we got really close. We did miss out, you know, mainly because perhaps we lacked a little bit of experience. But the football, I mean, it was the best football that we've seen for, you know, since the early days of the Premier League. So it just shows that, you know, the spirit is there and the desire to want to play football. And I'm looking forward certainly, you know, to next season. Now we've got another change of manager. Graham unfortunately has moved on to Brighton, and young Steve has come in, and you know, I mean, all the early signs, you know, certainly from training anyway, that you know, we're going to continue the type of football we played last year.
How much did it please you that the club appointed Steve as well? Well, considering it's a similar sort of philosophy, someone who wants to develop younger players, has got that track record, which obviously Graham tried to influence, tried to implement last season, should I say?
Yeah, I know it's hugely important. I mean, you know, I think that you know, whenever we appointed managers in the past, you know, obviously Roberto and then Brendan, they had to come. They couldn't check. They could tweak. You know, they could tweak what they wanted to do, but really the philosophy had to be. Everybody had to have the same philosophy. Graham certainly, you know, came in and did a magnificent job really with a lot of young players. And I think Steve can do exactly the same. I was part of the interviewing panel when you know, we went through a list of candidates, but Steve was the one that sort of stood out almost from the off. You know, as soon as he started talking, it was like he's almost one of those got blown away by him. Managed England under 17s to the World Cup. You know, they won the World Cup with. He's actually a Welshman as well from Pontypridd, which is always, you know, for a Welsh club, it's always nice to have. It's not necessary, but it is nice, the fact that he's Welsh as well. But you know, the games haven't started yet, and that's obviously going to be the acid test. But everything so far that you hear about him and see about him and talk to the players about him, how much they're enjoying training, and he will carry on that philosophy. And as I say, I'm really looking forward now to the start of the new campaign.
For you though, now obviously focusing back onto your retirement, last season you were actually brought back into the fold though, to work as the assistant manager. Did you have a feeling at the end of last season that you were leaving the club in a good place? From obviously now the honorary president, we should say, but did you feel as if you were leaving the club on a club that we were on the right track?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, to say that we got back to our roots a little bit last season. We played some terrific football. I lost count of the endless times we go in for a drink after the game. The opposition managers, be it at home or away, and just about every one of them were unanimous in saying that we were the best footballing team in the league, best team that they had, wow. And they went, wow. Even if we'd lost the game, they're like, wow, best team. Some of the football they play is unbelievable. We were almost terrified of playing it. They didn't actually say they were terrified, but we weren't really looking forward to this game because we knew that we weren't going to get much of the ball. So the club is in a really good position. The players, the younger players, have had a year's good experience of playing in the Championship, as well as the little bits that they had when they were out on loan. And I feel now that we couple of additions. As long as we don't lose too many, that's always. We lost Daniel James, unfortunately, to United, but that would have happened anyway. Irrespective whether we were still in the Premier League. Dan was always going to be, with his pace, was always going to be, playing at the real top level. But no, we're in a great position at the moment, and 3-4 weeks of the season now before it starts. I think Steve will implement. He loved the way that he watched all the footage, he said, from December on, so he knows the type of football that we play. He knows the football that he wants to play. He says he's going to tweak it a little bit, which obviously he's going to have to do. But the ethos will be exactly the same. We'll still get it down, we'll still pass it, and as I say, the club's in a really strong position, and I'm really sort of hopeful for next season.
I want you now to sort of reflect on your career as a whole. If you could tell us, in the cleanest way possible, the best story of your career, the best story from playing or managing. What sort of what tale do you tell people? The one that sort of like stands out.
There's no one. I mean, I think probably, as I say, from a playing point of view, the two best games were Leeds and Preston and Leeds. One followed each other. I think the thing that the one when I had again, apart from the Hull game, where I got really sort of filled up with the emotion of it all, was when the playoff game against Reading, and we turned up. I mean, the streets are obviously quite full of, but when we pulled up, to go into the bowels of Wembley Stadium, to see all those Swansea supporters. There must have been, God, I mean, we took 10,000 a person, but we must have taken 20, 30,000, I think it was, to Wembley. But to see them all congregate, and it was one of those wow moments that, I remember looking around and, come and play. Hey, we can't lose today. It's impossible. We cannot lose today. And I think looking at, I was really sort of emotional looking at the other player. I think everybody, you could see them all sort of filling up as well, especially the local boys. And well, to be fair, just about everybody. And it was that one moment when it's like, wow. But that's what you're in the game for, for moments like that. Obviously, great scenes at the end and stuff like that. But I mean, this was prior to the game now, and it was like, oh God, it was such a privilege to be on that coach and to representing our team, on behalf of all the supporters, and it was such a magic moment, and again, something I'll remember for the rest of my life.
I want to as well focus on the times when the stories you have in terms of the dressing room stories. From your point of view, could you just tell us something which is a bit sort of that the average person wouldn't know? In the change room, the story which really got was either humorous or.
Well, it's probably a little. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, there's when I remember Neil Taylor. He'd come back after the game. I think it might have been. I think it might have been at Arsenal, one of the games at Arsenal. We just won a game. and he's an intelligent boy, and yet he used to come out with some beauties. Something about, what did he say? Something like, he said, there's nothing worse. He said than looking up at that clock. He said, there's 80 minutes. There's another 20 minutes to go. And everybody was, what? I suppose there are so many really, but I mean, it's just the spontaneous things that I can't remember too much. I probably, as soon as we put the microphone down, I'll think of a million. But I think it's just constant banter all the time, with people, and for a club like ourselves, I'm not decrying ourselves, but to go to Old Trafford and to go to White Hart Lane and to go to the Emirates and to go to these massive grounds, and not just going there to get beat, but to actually go and compete with these boys. And all right, you might lose a game, but you know that we had a couple of years where we could go anywhere in the league and we could give anybody a game. We drew 0-0 at Anfield one time, and we should have beaten them. We actually got clapped off by the Anfield crowd, and it was like, it's just moments like that you look back and think, wow, they were great, great, just great memories.
In your memories, privileged to have those memories, I'm guessing as well. Your thoughts, but what does it mean to you as well? You sort of smirk about it when it's mentioned, but to have the title as being honorary president of the club after all those years being as a servant to the club, now being in that position, honorary or not, I suppose you think that must be a privilege for you.
Oh, it is, yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to sitting in the posh seats now. Prawn sandwiches and stuff like that. It is an honour, and we've only had 2 honorary presidents before us, and a Professor David Farmer and escaping the other one, Gwilym Joseph. They're both probably in their 80s. I think William was in his 90s even. So I'm not sure if that's taken as a compliment or as a privilege, but no, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's it's very much an honorary position, but the nice thing about it is that I've been invited to go up to the training ground as well. To go up, and I will do. I'll take that option of going up like once or twice a week. May travel with the first team as well to a couple of games. But it's nice. I mean, at the moment, it's I think because the season hasn't started yet, then there's not a huge amount of change. Obviously, going in training every day, but I just felt it was time. But I'm looking forward now to the next part then, where you can actually sit in the stand, watch the game, still get nervous, and hoping that we win. But the pressure is, and unfortunately, is on the players and the manager and his staff now. But you'll be there to support him, as much as you possibly can. And as I say, it's another chapter again now, but it's something I'm really looking forward to.
Well, Alan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. I mean, thank you so much for joining us on the official EFL podcast, and good luck with however the role goes for your next season.
Okay, thanks, Ben.